Welcome to the Paisans podcast. We're your hosts, the brothers from other mothers, Dante, Dave, and Sark. Join us as we talk about current events, our wives, kids, or whatever else life is throwing at us this week. You're with the Paisans, you're with family.
Just looking at ESPN today.
I actually didn't get a chance to watch much today because I was working during both the games. The Yankees were winning 4-2 in the ninth, I saw when I got home. And I think they were... Yeah, I think they were literally about to end. I was like, turned it on. There was two outs, I think. I was like, okay, this looks like they're in a good spot. Mets lost. Yeah, they lost 3-1. I got home to watch the last two innings. Apparently, they didn't do a whole lot the first few.
Astros?
Yeah, Houston.
Yeah.
So maybe something that Yankee fans might find enjoyable is that Juan Soto struck out to end the game today, which is, I was texting with my friends. I was like, I almost want to put on the fan, the radio station here, and just listen to like the Yankee callers who were still upset about it. Be like, Soto's overpaid. He struck out. Which is,
right.
It's just laughable.
No, he's going to shine. Don't worry.
I mean, he actually had a pretty good game. I mean, he's like the only one who was like getting on base today. So
did he get the loss though?
Well, I mean, he's a hitter. So the wins and losses go to the pitchers.
I thought he was a pitcher. I understand.
He was hitting. He was the last batter.
I don't know why I thought he was a pitcher. I don't follow. Obviously, I don't follow baseball. I mean, I know that the pitchers. I understand positions and all that. Jesus, but
who's on first, right?
Dave's like, so
that's a pretty sophisticated question because I figured he's a pitcher. I was like, oh, but he still got the loss. They just got this guy. They lose 3-1.
Yeah. So I mean, that's I guess the whole thing with him is that he got paid an absurd amount of money. It's the first time.
Yeah.
And Mike, you're a Yankee fan, right? So maybe you can give your perspective on this too. But it's the first time in my life that maybe ever, honestly, that a player willingly chose the Mets over the Yankees. Pretty sure the Yankees actually their offer was like right in par with the Mets. If not, I think there were rumors that they actually maybe were a little more or something. I forget exactly what it was.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up because I was actually thinking about this earlier today. And then I totally forgot until you just brought it up. And I was actually talking to my dad the other day about this too. So there's actually one difference in the offer. He got box seats with the Mets. They gave him and his family a box. And the Yankees refused it. And so he said, screw you to the Yankees. And they said, screw you to him. They actually said to him, we're paying you so much money, buy your own box. We don't give boxes to anybody. And that would be an insult to, the numbers we retired to play. I mean, you could look at it either way, right? So he wanted that box and they got into it and it did not end well, apparently. And so he said, screw you, I'll go to the other New York team. And the Mets gave him a box.
Because what's different about the Mets now is that they have Steve Cohen backing them, which he makes some of these owners look poor. He's so rich, he makes a few of them look really poor. Do you know who Steve Cohen is, Dante?
The name is familiar.
He's a big hedge fund guy. He's if that show Billions on Showtime.
Okay,
he's the inspiration for that show. Yes. So, I mean, he's like some call him ruthless, I guess. Yeah, I mean, clearly worth billions.
Ruthless, okay.
I mean, I guess that's the perception.
I hear you.
Like a Steinbrenner, right? I mean, very comparable to a Steinbrenner.
So in the aspect that he's spending a ton of money now, which, I mean, the last owners of the Mets, they obviously had money, but then they lost a ton of money in the Bernie Madoff thing. So they got very, very conservative after that. And they looked at it more as like a business versus I want to do anything to win, where that's what George Steinbrenner would do. He was like, I will win at all costs. It doesn't matter. I just want to win. And Steve Cohen is saying similar things. They just haven't won yet. Because now, ironically, the Yankees, who are now run by Steinbrenner's kids, or one of his kids, I know one of them passed away, they run it like a business. They want to get a return on their investment. But George, their father, was never like that. He was like, I will do things my way and I want to win. I mean, I know in the 70s, he got into a bunch of big clashes with Billy Martin, the manager, that fired him, brought him back, brought him back a bunch of times or something like that.
That's right.
But they won a lot. They won a lot in the 90s and then early 2000s. They had, so things have changed.
Is there a salary cap in Major League Baseball?
No, and I don't know exactly how it works, but there's some sort of luxury tax. So if you go over a certain number, you have to pay some sort of fine towards it.
And deterrent.
The idea is it's supposed to go to these other teams that aren't generating as much revenue. The problem is that these other teams then don't put that into the product on the field. They just pocket the money. So they just, so like there's these teams like the Oakland A's, for example.
It's crazy.
Every year they're at the bottom of the spending. So every year they're getting money from these other teams. Now they don't do great with attendance because they're often bad, but their owner is obviously rich enough to own a baseball team. So he just continues to put like the lowest spending roster together. The team is continuously not good. They actually have had some good seasons. I mean, obviously with Moneyball, they've had some good seasons mixed in, but a lot of times they're just not very good. And it's because they're not spending the money. And then when they do get the money from these other owners, they're not doing anything productive with it. They're just...
See, that's the part that,
I think there's actually rules that are supposed to make these teams spend money on players and enhancements to the stadium or whatever to draw crowds, I think. But I don't know for sure.
Without a cap, I mean, on top of everything else, like, so the Yankees, the Mets, like the teams with huge markets and the money, they can just be like super teams.
And that's sort of what happens a lot of times. The Yankees had that run for a long time. Then the Red Sox started spending money. They got very good. The Dodgers now are like, what they're doing is sort of insane. I mean, they're paying a lot of these guys. So they have this guy named Shohei Ohtani, he's basically like Babe Ruth, modern day Babe Ruth. Like he pitches,
because he's a hitter and a pitcher.
So
and
he's this big, 6'5" lefty who just like drops bomb. Last year he didn't pitch because he had Tommy John surgery, but still played almost every game, hit 50 home runs, stole 50 bases. I mean, the guy's unbelievable. But the Dodgers signed him to a contract that was like, up until the Mets signed Soto, was the largest contract in the history of baseball, but they deferred like $650 million of it until after he retired. Because he was like, all I want is $2 million a year, and I want you to be able to make a super team around me. And then when I'm done playing, like, when the contract's over, you will pay me the sum of this contract over, say, 30 years. I don't know what.
That's like the Bonita, Bobby Bonita thing.
It's the exact same thing. Which
Bonilla, not Bonita.
Yeah, Bonilla.
Further cementing my deep knowledge of MLB.
Yeah, so the Mets get dogged for that every year because every July 1st, Bobby Bonilla cashes like $1 million check from them. But so this guy Shohei Ohtani is going to be doing the same thing. Now, of course, I think the level of player that Shohei Ohtani is and will be by the time he's done is going to drastically overshadow what Bobby Bonilla was. But Bobby Bonilla was also pretty good at a certain point. And I think he did give the Mets some decent years, I think. It is what it is, right? But like now the Dodgers are really, like, they have a super team. They're better than the Mets. They're better than the Yankees. They're probably the best team in the league, if I would imagine.
So tell me about this Soto contract, though. 15 years. So that gets old kind of quick. So I'm assuming, like, do both sides have some type of out? And we know he does. Why he would want it. I mean, he's still going to get paid, I'm sure. But the Mets have to live with him for 15 years?
I mean, I don't know the specifics of the contract, but baseball contracts are fully guaranteed. That's what makes, you look at NFL contracts, right? We're an NFL free agency. Yeah. But those contracts are always tricky. You might see a guy sign like a 4-year deal, but in actuality, it's like a 1-year deal where all the money at the end is not guaranteed so that they can cut ties and not have to pay him. In baseball, you sign a guy, it's like you're giving him that money at some point. So with Soto, it's 15 years. I think he's 26 years old. So theoretically, that's going to bring him into his early 40s. I would imagine by the time he's in like his late 30s, even like say beyond 35, it's going to start getting a little dicey for him. He's going to probably start dealing with injuries and all that. He's already not a great fielder. He was basically signed because of his hitting. I mean, he is a very prolific hitter. So 15 years. I think I was just doing the math. I think it's $765 million because Danielle I was trying to explain it to Danielle like she actually cares. Like, just like basically talking to myself, like, babe, like, look, this guy's making $765 million. And she's like, she's being nice and entertaining me. But So I think it was $51 million a year he's getting right now from them. He likely has a clause where he can opt out after, say, 4 years. By the time he's like 30, he could potentially opt out if he wants to, if he thinks he can get more money, which maybe he can. I don't know. I mean, if he continues on the trajectory he's been so far, he actually might be able to. But then
and yet no real pressure. I mean, his only worst enemy will be himself
100%.
because he's locked himself in for the rest of his
100%.
career. So at this point, no pressure.
Yeah. I mean, and he's also
he does better and he can make more
money.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Mets have an out on that. They might later in the contract. There might be, say by year 13, there might be a club option for, that season. I don't know though. I mean, I don't really understand the contracts like that either, but because there's always certain things like incentives, there's certain bonuses if you hit certain stats. I'm sure he's got all that too, which is only going to add to his wealth.
But to your point, a guy like Cohen spending the money, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but as a Mets fan, it's not like you look at that and say, what kind of contract is that? There goes any other prospects we've had, right, for building up this team over time. You say, well, he'd just throw more money at it if he needs to, right? You kind of don't think about it the way that maybe like the 75% of the lower echelon teams have to deal with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely going to be some people who will still be like, that was way too much money. I'm only when people say, like, what do you care? It's not your money. And it's like, he's not breaking any rules. So, like, the worst case is, like, this guy, this very rich man overpaid for someone because he was trying to win. You know what I mean? So it's like, it just doesn't.
Yeah. Well, and when there's no cap,
exactly.
Like, what do you care?
There's no salary
cap. That's the thing. If there's a cap, then it adds a lot more sophistication to the management of the game. Obviously.
Right. Like a football team has to navigate that and figure that out. And,
Yeah. And those contracts just add to the complexity, Dave, because to your point, it's like, he signed a 4-year, $80 million deal, but he makes $30 million or $40 million in the last, 2 years of that contract, or he makes the last $40 million in the last year of that contract, and they'll sign the deal that way, knowing full well they're going to cut him by year 3, and he knows it too. It's all about that number being in the headline. It's weird.
I was just going to say, these players have to know.
They all know it.
They can't not know. They're all represented by agents that are negotiating the deals on their behalf that also get a certain percentage of the salary. So they have incentive too. Like, they can't lie to their client, or they shouldn't lie to their client.
Being due a large sum of money at the end of your contract is the reason a lot of these guys get cut or traded at the end of their career, or, at the end of their contract, because it's like, well, we don't have to pay you one, and then, like, look at Hassan Reddick, for example, and, like, he needed to sign a 1-year deal. And I think he signed another 1-year deal, because he shit the bed last year. But
that happens when you sit out 9 weeks.
Yes, exactly. But all that to say, like, he was coming back for a prove it year. Now he's definitely coming back for a prove it year, in the hopes that he can parlay that into a 3-year, if he's lucky, deal with, however many tens of millions guaranteed, plus the extra that he knows he'll never get. MLB just so different, because without the cap, like you said, Dave, it's just rich people spending money. So who cares? Pay him what he wants.
Yes, pay the guy whatever he wants. But then in this world where that is somebody's reality, right? Like $750 friggin' million. I think, like, to the Yankees, and I don't know if it's Soto, the agent, both, but it just felt like to them disingenuous. Like, you have the world, but I want more, right? Like, I want the middle box right there. Like, show me how much you really love me, right? And they were like, fuck you, basically. Like, that's how it went down. Essentially, like, he left and it was done, and it kind of came out of that. Like, we are giving you a king's ransom. Like, you're insulting us at this point, and it wasn't that way to the Mets, because they knew he was walking in the door. They already knew what he was going to ask for. It wasn't the same way.
Exactly. That's
that's a point.
The Yankees were in a tough spot that way, Mike.
That's an interesting point.
Right.
Time will tell if the Yankees made the right decision, because maybe they did. Maybe they don't. Maybe they were like,
well, he's going
to be good.
Yeah, he's going to produce. Don't make any mistake. I mean, the guy's.
It wasn't like the Yankees were ready to move on, but I think But I actually respect a team that says, no, that's enough is enough. At a certain point, it's like, you know what, actually, now you're revealing something about your character, and I don't want to be associated with you.
Yeah. It's so hard to tell, right? Is it the agent, right? Because a lot of times these guys are like, talk to my agent. I'm not saying anything. Whatever he says. He wants a box for me and my family. Like, yeah, that's what I want,
Well, and sometimes these agents give bad advice. Refer back to our previous conversation about Hassan Riddick.
Someone was giving that guy bad advice, whether it was his agent, friend, family, I don't know. Someone was giving that guy terrible advice.
Somebody was, yes. And it cost him millions. But, I have respect for an organization that says at a certain point, like, no, look, enough is enough.
So there's a segue there. There's a segue there to the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, because they pretty much told him, listen, they cannot seriously. So we're after the Justin Fields signing. Aaron Rodgers is, I don't know, he's floating out there somewhere.
Yeah.
But he wanted to come back to the Jets, and he would be the best option for them to have success next year in terms of skill. But they decided, too big of a distraction. We don't need, we're trying to build a new culture, new head coach, new GM, whatever. We need to have guys who are about the team, et cetera. They won't say any of this stuff because he's a Hall of Fame player, and he's polarizing, but I think he's still well respected within the league. They won't straight up say this, but they don't want him because he's a distraction. They don't want him because he comes off as a me guy, which I don't think is actually all that true. I actually tend to be an Aaron Rodgers defender, I think, on a lot of cases. But even if that's not true, the perception is that he's like that. So the Jets, the Aaron Rodgers experiment went exactly how everything else has gone for the Jets in their existence. Maybe they're turning a corner. I mean, for me, I just don't expect anything from them anymore. So it's fine. You can't anymore. After this was it. This was the last chance they got, from me at least. So, maybe it'll be nice to actually watch them next year when the expectations are super low, and maybe they actually aren't. Maybe they surprise us here and there. I don't know. It might actually be fun to watch them for once.
Yeah, I hear you, Dave, and I completely agree. I feel very much. But
I was upset about originally because I was like, all right, if we're not going with Rodgers, we're admitting that we're not trying to win this season. And there might be some truth to that, but I mean, the players will always try very hard, and Aaron Glenn will try hard, and this new GM. But, I think ultimately, to your point, Dante, it's like they had to make a decision about the organization. And I actually think now that the dust is settled, I think they made the right decision, because look what's even happening now that Rodgers hasn't signed. It's like all the stories are like, where's Aaron Rodgers going? There was that weird connection to the Giants, like kind of randomly, honestly. And then,
well, he was here, he's living here. They figured, they needed a guy who could maybe mentor a new, a new draft pick. It would have been nice.
If he wants to play, he's probably like, where can I land? Like, who needs a quarterback? Giants needed a quarterback. So like, I don't think he ever was really considering them, but I'm sure they had conversations. I kind of think his camp may have leaked the news about them being kind of further along in contract negotiations to get the attention from someone else. That's my opinion. But like, I think he wanted to go to the Vikings. I think that's been his hope, because I think he probably feels like they're the best team. Because I mean, the Steelers want him, and he is just like,
Steelers want him.
He's taking his time here. So like, I don't know what the deal is with him.
I would argue the Steelers need him, because you have two pretty loud receivers now on that team that are going to need a quarterback, not a rookie,
Yeah, it's interesting, because you're right. I think, and now the story is he might retire, which I don't get at all. I don't even believe that, really. But now there's this angle that he might retire.
It seems weird that he would go out this way.
Yes.
God, I can't
no.
That would be as close to ruining a legacy as you can come if he doesn't have some sort of redemption here off of this, what happened with the Jets. And quite frankly, like, his stats last year actually ended up being pretty good, but
they were good.
Yeah, on paper. But I mean, if you watch those last few games, like he was starting to hit a groove a little bit.
I was like you, Dave. I was assuming they should bring him back because it was like the best option available to them. That was my feeling too.
Now that said about Justin Fields, I think he's pretty good too. But like the problem with the Jets, I don't mean to make this like a whole like let's relive this horrific season we just had, but like the guy was coming off a torn Achilles, and all the reports are that the owner started freaking out after when right around the time he fired Saleh, that there's rumors he wanted to bench him, and it's like, if you believe in what you built, why are you panicking after 4 games when you have a guy who's missed all of last season due to an Achilles? Like, he's due to be rusty. Yeah. Where's the logic? And then you start firing the coach, and you implement a guy who's in over his head as the interim coach. What did you think was going to happen? It just so like, my biggest thing too with Rodgers is I feel like we got robbed of experiencing truly what Aaron Rodgers could be as a player.
Of course we did.
Yeah.
But I mean, is there any part of you that thinks that as a Jets fan we deserve anything less?
That it would have went any other way?
Anything more?
I mean, of course not.
I mean, is there a single Jets fan, honestly, can you find an honest Jets fan who has been a fan for more than, I don't know, 2 years, who could tell you that they were, like, he goes down after 4th play and that they didn't think to themselves,
yeah,
of course. Like, how did I not see this coming?
100%. And what sucks about that is that was terrible, and we should have known that everything after that was going to be terrible. But then it was like, well, he might come back in season. Guys, like, let's not doubt Aaron Rodgers. He can maybe come back in 3 months from a torn Achilles, even though no one has ever done it, and he's 40 years old. But like, we were like, it's possible. Why not? Like, look how determined he is.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, it never happened. That was never going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, we're just like, okay, well, next year we're just going to be good. And all the thing that pisses me off, and Dante, you and I have talked about this, is that all the analysts were like, the Jets are winning the Super Bowl. Like, they're a Super Bowl contender. Okay, great. Yeah. And then when they suck, they're like, well, the same old Jets. And it's like, none of you were saying that until the Monday morning quarterbacking started happening. It's like, It's so easy to criticize after the fact, but then you all were like, I think the Jets are a Super Bowl team right now. It's like, despite the fact that they never showed anything with these players that they had of being that level. So,
go play Madden 25 right now. The Jets are like freaking unstoppable.
That they are.
Right, because they made those games when they were projecting how the team was going to perform the next season. Yes. They're like one of the top 3 teams.
Because Rodgers is still good, and then you have the young core of players that are all ascending, and they're if you do a franchise mode in Madden, all these guys are probably programmed to become like absolute superstars by like year 3 or 4. So it's like, because they're all hyped up, I mean, so yeah. And now the ironic thing is next year, this coming season, it's going to be the same play, like some of the same players, and the Jets are going to be terrible. Like, and Matt, they're just going to be awful. It's like, despite having Garrett Wilson, they'll find a way to tick him down a little bit. Sauce Gardner had an off year. Let's tick him down a little bit. Right? And somehow, like, that team that was stacked in the year before with a lot of the same players is now just going to be
same guy.
Shitty. Like, is going to be absolutely terrible.
You're right. They'll take
Giants
down Sauce
too, man.
at like 10 points.
Well, yeah.
All those holding
You're
calls.
Right, the Giants too.
A lot of holding, a lot of pass interference calls.
Do you guys think Rodgers essentially had a hand in his own demise there with the Jets? Because it felt like he led to the firing of Saleh, at least from where I sat. That's what it looked like. I mean, he had definitely a hand in it.
He didn't help it.
So then,
I'll say that, yeah.
Right.
He didn't help the public perception at all. But
I would have even thought inside, behind closed doors, maybe even more. I don't know. But then it's like, then you take this risk of what? A new regime, and they're just going to fall in love with you. I mean, obviously they didn't. So
yeah, I think he did he obviously did. He's the quarterback of this team. They did a lot to cater to him, probably too much, if we're being honest, because, kind of your point about Soto and showing character and wanting a king's ransom for, he's getting paid $750 million, or the offer from the Yankees say $750 million. It's like, well, show me how bad you really want me. Give me this box. It's like, how about that $750 million we're giving you? Like, that should be enough. But so, like, Rodgers, kind of the same thing, right? Like, I mean, they're paying him a good amount of money. Now, he did restructure to try to help us and bring him, but it was like, it was under the assumption or the perception that they had to bring in all these guys that he wanted. Randall Cobb, Alan Lazard, and then eventually Devontae Adams, and I don't know, they probably had a few more guys, I forget who. And the perception was always that, oh, that's because Aaron Rodgers wanted them there, so he made the Jets go get it. Maybe there's truth to that, maybe there's not, but he never was like, actually he did try to say, like, it's pretty crazy that people think I have that type of power to call shots like that. He did say that on the Pat McAfee show at least once.
I wonder if he's being somewhat facetious, though, because all he really has to do is, like, put the thought out there. I'd be a lot happier if I had these guys, right? I mean, exactly. It's like they made the decisions. I just said it.
So, I mean, he's like putting these things out there. And then, I think at the time, especially Joe Douglas, maybe at least last year, right, feeling pressure now, all of a sudden, he's like, I need to make moves to save my ass here. So that's how you end up with Devontae Adams in the middle of the year when the team is, spiraling out of control.
Signing Hassan Riddick after what?
Right. Week and it's 8? Like, where was this, in the summer when this guy was cosplaying in Japan? So it's, like they ended up making like some of these desperate moves, and at least the perception was always that Rodgers was running the team. Actually, I will say sometimes Rodgers is tough to know for sure if he's telling the truth, but he explained that, and I thought to myself, that seems like a logical explanation. And then he actually referenced that he mentioned this whole thing is like Coach Sal is big with, or he called him Robert. I think that was maybe the other thing that never helped. It was like he never called him Coach, he called him Robert all the time. He's saying like Robert always talks about two score leads, 2 touchdown leads. And then there was like, after Salah had been fired, there was a game that they actually won like pretty big. And Rodgers actually was like, yeah, we're big with these two touchdown leads. Like once we get them, we feel like our defense is gonna hold them. And I was like, so they're like still talking about like the same mantra that apparently Robert Saleh was conveying. So to me, I was always like, I don't know if he actually did like wanted him fired and then he got fired. I think there's a very strong likelihood that Woody Johnson had decided he wanted to fire him for whatever reason. You could make a conspiracy theory out of the fact that Robert Saleh was wearing the Lebanon flag or the Palestine flag and then was like fired the next week. And Woody Johnson was maybe trying to get in the good light of Donald Trump to be the ambassador again, if you want to go down a conspiracy theory.
But I think what leads to that stuff, like whatever it is, the rumor is that like it's not typical that you would let the coach go in the middle of the season like that. I mean, unless there were dire straits, right, or something like that, they got fired because they were doing something against the rules. It's like, why are you disrupting the team, the organization, the players, when this thing hasn't fully unfolded yet? I think
Woody Johnson thought that it was somehow going to ignite them, like it was going to light a fire under them. He was under the impression that if he got rid of Robert Saleh, the guys would be like, "Oh my God, now I feel free to like just let it loose," and they were just going to unite behind whatever. Now we love Coach Ulbrich, and they were going to. I think that's what he thought was going to happen.
It was just I mean, I would agree. That's the only logical reason you do something like that. As soon as they fired Saleh, I kept thinking, I probably said it to you guys, what is the plan? Because you have Aaron Rodgers, and this guy wants to play. Like, wasn't the plan to see this through? So now it's like you fire this coach mid-season. What well-respected coach is going to be like, I'll take this job, and yeah, sure, you want to strap Aaron Rodgers to me? I'll take him. Like, no respectable head coach is going to look at that and be forced to do that. They might have reviewed everything and like, all right, listen, this is our best option here. Like, we're paying this guy a ton of money because, I mean, that's the other issue with the Jets with him is this dead cap, which I don't even understand exactly how this works, but they owe him a lot of money. And I think it's going to be a big hit to them next year, actually. It's like that. Like to me, I was like, all right, well, like, why don't we just see this through? But again, it's like if Aaron Glenn has any chops really as a coach, and if Daryl Muji has any chops as a GM, they are actually making the right decision. It's a difficult decision, but it's like you got to start clean.
Yes.
You cannot have any distraction like that come in here.
I'm sure he will have the career season if he goes and plays for Pittsburgh.
Undoubtedly,
He's out of He's off the Jets. So now it's time for the resurgence. Watch him come back and watch the Steelers.
To complete the arc of like how these things work as a Jets fan, it's like the final piece is the guy coming back to another team and just like shoving it down our throats in every way.
Yep.
Especially in New York, because the teams of late, since the Yankees won the World Series in 2009, have really not won anything. I guess the Giants won a Super Bowl after that, right? The Giants were 2011. Devils and New Jersey Devils of hockey were in the Stanley Cup, I think, after that. But they haven't been very good. The Knicks are the Knicks. The Jets are the Jets. The Giants, since that Super Bowl, have been on the same level. And then the baseball teams have been kind of meh over the last 15 years. Not consistently good.
It's been rough. It's been rough.
So we have the biggest market. We have the most people. We have the most, which leads us to have the most dumb fans on top of all that. And spoiled.
Well, half.
So
half
like
of them
every
spoiled.
other city hates us because of that when it comes to sports. So it's almost like they're all gunning for the New York team, even when they're not good. So there's just like a lot of pressure, and none of them have lived up to it since the Giants won the Super Bowl, basically.
And it's really interesting. You were saying earlier too with the Yankees how the Steinbrenner son's son now run it more like a business, and it's true. And I think Cashman pretty much echoes their thoughts, their strategy, right, when he's in front of the press. And they're really measuring themselves on their playoff appearances. I mean, okay, yeah, you just had the World Series and everything, but he'll look the press straight in the eye and say, as far as I'm concerned, we were in the playoffs last year, the year before. That's how that we're filling seats. And as you said, that's how they're measuring. I mean, sure, we won a World Series. We're not going to move heaven and earth to get it the way that maybe a lot of our fans are used to in the past, right? And
there's like huge investments. Some of these teams spending huge amounts of money. It's kind of amazing. Just how much money is just in sports alone. I mean, the billions and billions spent on sports in every facet, from, the teams, the players, the games, the TV, the advertisements. Think about it. It's amazing, actually. It's actually beautiful because it's just people playing a game. No matter which sport it is, it's just people playing a game. And it generates unbelievable amounts of revenue. Unbelievable amounts.
NFL, look what the NFL does. I mean, it's insane. The amount, and I know we talked about that a little bit I forget the amount of revenue, but what Roger Goodell has done is, I mean, he's going way past the other big sports when it comes to the money that's coming in and just the development of the game, even though people will say the game is worse now, but literally everyone watches it every Sunday. It's like all people are talking about in this country. No one can hit anymore in baseball. It's like guys used to be evaluated off their batting average, and now it's like no one cares about your batting average anymore. It's like, do you hit home runs? Do you or not? It's like you could strike out every other bat, but if you hit 50 home runs, we like you. It's good.
Yeah.
So it's
crazy.
Well, and while those seasons are carrying on, and the NFL has found a way to permeate even during the off season. Now it's incredible. I mean, right from the end of the season. I mean, if your team sucks, it's even more interesting for you in the off season. But like the season ends and immediately, you go from speculation and who's going where to they can start to, look at free agency, right? They can start to move their guys, right? That all leads up to the draft. You have the draft. Then before you know it, it's the summer, and you've got preseason. So it's just amazing how they've been able to keep it going. And I don't always remember it being like this. I mean, in terms of the media coverage that it gets now. And kudos to the NFL again, man, because that momentum is still as hot right now as it felt like it was during the season.
NFL draft has become primetime television. Like the first round, 8:00 on a Thursday, runs for like 4 hours with nonstop coverage. And people are tuned in, glued to the TV watching it. Yes.
Riveted.
While people sit there and just wait. Like we're absolutely blown away by it. And it's like, and I've been guilty of it too. I'm not like, I've been guilty of this as well. So it's just crazy how that became a thing. I even watched like the second day sometimes. I'm like, it's on TV. I'm like watching it. It's crazy. And the NFL Combine is now televised. So you can
Yeah.
And free agency is like such a huge. No other sport has free agency like this. The NBA did, I think, at one point, but I don't think it's quite like this anymore.
The 90s. Yeah. Guys, I think we need to wrap it up. I'm absolutely exhausted. Like the whole day got up with me. I've been up for like 20 hours. Sitting here and I'm just like, I'm like, the microphone is like right here. I'm like lucid dreaming.